postpartum is a tough time. It's really a tough time, including the hormones, the pain that lasts for a long time, the healing that's going to take a lot of time. And these are things, at least here in the East, we never talked about it. We never talked about it. And that's the culture we grew up in. And that's something we don't want to do anymore. So that is where your digital community comes in, allowing you to express something that you're innately feeling that you were told never to do.
This podcast is for education and information purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Welcome to the Motherhood Clinic, a podcast about caring for mothers after childbirth, led by clinical experience and real-life stories. If you're a new mum and ever asked yourself, is what I'm going through normal? Should I be worried? Or who should I ask for help? Then this podcast is for you. It's for anyone navigating those early weeks, months, or even years after having a baby. Each episode brings together voices from across the motherhood journey, from clinicians, experts, and mothers from all walks of life. We're here to help you feel more empowered in your unique motherhood journey. We believe in a better start to motherhood.
Welcome, Michelle. I'm really pleased to have you on. So just a quick introduction. This is the Motherhood Clinic podcast, and we are bringing together a range of different clinicians, and we're pleased to introduce people from across the globe. And so today we have Dr. Michelle Frank, and she'll be talking about her work around communities. I wonder if I hand over to you, Michelle, to give a bit of a background intro as to what you've done to date, your background and expertise, and then I'll talk about why I'm excited to have you on the podcast.
Definitely. Thanks a lot for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here, especially since we live in different countries. A brief introduction would be a lot of my career has been chance. I've not really planned out a lot of what I've been doing, inclusive of everything I've been doing lately as well. So I studied medicine, and by chance I went to a health tech startup, and there I worked on my first community, which was a parenting community, a lot of which we're going to even talk about today. It was mothers asking questions about their babies, and it was a lot I also learned in that first community, and it was something I loved doing. I loved sitting and answering questions that women had about their babies, and that's when I realized that this is something I can do for a long time. And it's been almost 10 years now, and I still enjoy talking to women every day about their health and building products that can actually help them to make a huge difference. Because in India, I realized we don't have a lot of communities for conversations about women's health. And that has really been the gap that I'm trying to bridge. And hopefully we are making a difference, but still a long way to go.
Great. 10 years. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'm going to be relying on you to fill in a lot of the gaps in this conversation.
Sure.
And Michelle, there are 3 reasons why I'm excited to bring to this conversation. Number one is culturally. Both of our heritage goes back to the East. But, now I live in the West, and a global perspective on what women's health and postnatal health looks like around the world would be really helpful to explore. The second thing that we'll dig into later is a generational one. So you seeing from the past 10 years or even before that, what has been the evolution to date in terms of women's health communities and what it looks like back then, what is it like today, and then for the future. And the third angle is more of a format one, which is as you've been at the forefront of creating these digital communities, when historically community was a very physical thing. We were born into community. So having a conversation around what the format does and how does that affect the impact and the types of discussions we can have would be really exciting to explore. So that kind of sets the scene in terms of what the conversation is. We're going to talk about the value of community. We'll talk about finding your community and what that looks like. And then we'll talk a bit about what we think the future is. So that's the stage that we're setting for this discussion. Pretty broad.
Yeah, but
all
we'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah. Absolutely. So why don't we start there and at the highest level talk about what is the value of community and why is it important, especially for new mothers that have just given birth?
So when you mention value of community, I think it's unique to each one of us. It's not really a universal thing. Community is universal, but the fact that how you experience the community is unique. So for every mother that joins a community or seeks for a community, she has a different reason she's joining it for. So even though we build a community or even say anything, a tech product or anything for a new mom, we have to keep in mind that she's going to use it for a different reason. So we have to consider that everyone's experience within a community is different. It's not going to be the same, or it's not going to be what we expect from it. So value is really need based. Like, why do I need this community? What do I need for it to help? And since I wouldn't use the word isolated, but we are growing more and more isolated and raising children by
Mm.
ourselves without the essence of what a community used to be. Our digital spaces are what's filling in those gaps and helping to be our virtual community while raising children. I think in a sense, even though motherhood seems very singular, you have a baby, it's just you and your baby, you really need a village to help raise a child. And I think that's where digital communities are actually helping fill the gaps, because it's not very easy to access your community, the ones that you are used to or have around you growing up, especially here in the East. So being able, it's not necessarily a new digital community, even doing video calls with your family back home essentially forms you being having access to your own community. So I think the value and need is very different for each woman raising their child today. And we need to, I think, look more into what are the unique reasons women seek for communities after giving birth. We do know the ones like maybe breastfeeding, feeding, even like nap times and those kind of things. But like, what are the other reasons we would consider why a woman would join a community?
Having a child is such a huge life event, and a lot of that is, there's the happiness of such an amazing event, but there's also the anxiety
Yes.
and the uncertainty of what to do next. A few generations ago, that was all just done physically. You've been at the forefront of creating a lot of digital communities for women, as you say, and there's a lot of great online support and help and ability to reach out and to get access to people that you might not otherwise have access to. But there is still a need for, sometimes it was great to have someone on hand and physically there.
Right.
How have you found that in the communities that you've seen? How have you seen digital's ability to provide that support, and where do you think that there is still a way to go in terms of things that he can't do?
So a great way to know something like that is when you receive a response. So in a lot of my experience, I would believe that women would come once to ask a question, oh, my baby is not feeding very well, what should I do about it? And then you give a response and okay, fine, you know you've helped somebody and you hope you've helped somebody and it's made a difference. But a lot of the time, these women come back like a week later or sometimes a month
Mm.
later. Thank you so much for helping me. Like we would get the notification, I'd get the pop up like, oh, this has got another answer or something like that. So I think that is very essential in trying to, that's when you know you're helping. Another very
Mm.
interesting case that happened to me was, and this happened a couple of years later, she found me on Facebook and she said,
Yeah.
oh, I met, you helped me. And I had left that startup almost 2 years ago, the parenting startup. And she actually said, oh, I was one of the people you helped on this platform. And my baby, expecting my second child now. And you answered a question. And it's something that you don't expect at the time when you're answering the question. So I think these digital communities, especially if you have experts that can answer questions, they make a huge difference. And you don't realize the difference because it's a mother in need and doesn't know where to go. And you have provided that insight, which could have seemingly been easier for you or small for you, but it's a big deal for them. And when they
Yeah.
come back to tell you, that's when you realize, like, okay, this is important. That's where I realized that this is an important facet to have for women at their fingertips, because we don't know
Mm.
where else they're going to get this information, right? There's a lot of misinformation as well. So having
Yeah.
communities that can provide information, expert driven or scientific driven information is usually so helpful that it doesn't always show tangible results, but it's actually happening on the other side.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And that goes back to the first point you made, which is people get different types of value from a
Right.
community. Well, in the first instance, we're talking about reassurance and confidence that you're doing the right thing. That's one.
Right.
The other, I imagine, is just a connection, right? Just having someone else on this journey, whether it was someone that was informed or not, but just someone that's alongside you. I could see the value in that. And then I guess this is where digital does have a greater value, which is the convenience,
Yes.
which is maybe your mother-in-law or your mum isn't up at 2 a.m, or your
Right.
partner is maybe they're traveling or whatever. So just having someone that is with you on this journey is huge. So it's partly an element of knowing that person is a trusted person, not just someone
Yes.
that's convenient to be there for you.
Yes.
We've touched a bit about the generational differences. We talked about our parents when you were just born into a community. You had no choice as to what
Yes.
community you were in. And again, another advantage we have with digital is that you can choose to be part of any community, but that's also a double-edged sword because you can be part of 100 communities, but never really feel like you belong to any one of
Yeah, the
those.
belonging, yes.
And I wonder if we explore that. And also, I'd love to hear if you have any more cultural insights from what you've seen around the world. Let's look first about that sense of, let's explore the digital versus physical, which is, yes, before you were born into one community, which was good and bad because you were just left with it, but it was also because you knew that they were there for you through thick and thin. The good thing about digital is you can belong to any community you want to, but you can also feel like you don't belong to any one. So let's explore a bit of that, and tell me some of your insights or observations that you've seen from both of those aspects.
Right. You've asked some great questions here. So I would begin with, in either communities, if you're in the wrong one, you tend to feel lonely. I think that's one of the ways you can know, like, you're not really getting the value of what essentially a good community is if that's how you are feeling. So I think the first thing in knowing if you're in a good community would be how you feel in it. Like, are your needs being met? Are you feeling seen with your concerns? Are you getting your questions answered? Are there people who are there to emotionally support you? So I think those essential features are what define what a community is for you. And that could be a physical or a digital one. As you mentioned previously, we were born into a community. I think in India and Southeast Asia, vastly, we are still in that. We still live very close to our family. Like, I live close to my parents. So it's our community systems are still existent, non-existent, but yes, it has decreased quite significantly. Like, I'd rarely see my aunts or I'd rarely see my grandparents or cousins, which is something in my parents' generation very common. So while a community still exists once you step out the door, it's not that accessible, which is usually where a digital community comes. And I like the point where you made, where you get to select the community you want to belong to. So even in a sense, today, a lot of us select our physical communities that we wish to belong to as well. So those are traits you emulate in whether you are within a physical community or a digital community. Today, people are becoming more picky around the people that they are surrounding themselves with. So I think when you know you're in a community, as I would go back to my first point, is you feel like you're in the right place and you don't feel left out. You feel your needs are being met. So similarly, in a digital community, now that it's not out the door, it's at your fingertips. You find or maybe browse through a few of the communities. I think highlighting what your needs are would be the first step towards approaching any community. Like, when you're browsing a community, is this community going to facilitate my need? Is this community just spreading misinformation? Is it more of a forum than a community? There are lots of red flags, I would say, that you can notice early on within any community, even before you interact within the community. And there's always communities where, as I mentioned, like the communities I used to work with or build, I was always there. There was a moderator. There are people who you can recognize as the person you can go to for assistance. There would be users that answer questions, and you would notice that there's like a routine behavior within these communities that makes you feel safe and heard. So this is also very, what you say, equal to a physical community. It's
Yes.
almost the same. You feel the same feeling, like there is someone who is not going to allow people to step their bounds within a physical community. There are going to be people who are going to keep things in check. There are people going to ensure that you feel good. So anywhere you feel your needs are met and you're being seen for what you're coming to the community for, is a sense of community you belong to and you want to be in. So that can be different for everyone. But I think the feeling of you belong to this community and my needs are being met, I think that's the most basic way to know that you're in the right community.
Yeah, it's a really good point about, and it's common sense now you say it, but how a digital community is good when it emulates a physical one. So I think about if I go back to a village mentality where there were the elders who were respected and there was a sense of wisdom or education about what you would ask them for, and they were stable figures. They weren't
Right.
changing each time.
Yes.
There's also another element where other people that are part of that community have a role to play. And there's a question in there, which is, what role do I want to play in that community too? Because you are not just a passive recipient. There's an element where if I speak to the communities that I'm part of, I feel good that I know that I'm also contributing to that community, not just asking questions and receiving all the value. There's a question in there, which is, it's sometimes a difficult thing to know how you feel, right? So when we say about understanding my needs, looking back, I can articulate what they are. But for instance, new mothers, they may not know what their needs are. They just know that something's missing. And again, it's quite a hard thing to articulate, oh, this is what I think I need versus what I actually need. There's a duration question as well, which is, oh, this doesn't feel like for me, right? So, but it might be that I haven't given it enough time. It might be that it's not right for me, but I don't know that. And there is a point where when you've tried enough, where you're like, this just really isn't for me, and actually having the strength to walk away or just be like, you know what, this is not right for me.
Right.
So do you have any perspectives on that in terms of, you're absolutely right to say a community should make you feel good, but the question is, you don't know when that should feel good. Is it in the first day, the first week, the first month, or are there certain things where, although the first impression, it takes a lot of strength or courage to join a community.
Yes, agreed.
And that some people are just hesitant to do that. So they might like, oh, I don't like that, so I'm going to leave straight away before I have the chance to expose myself. Do you have any more nuanced views in terms of that feeling that you get of whether, if you don't have that instant feeling of this feels great, and how much time do you give it? Or are there any indications you would use to say, hey, maybe give this a couple of times, or actually these are the markers that says, no, this really isn't right for you?
Right. I think the simplest way is your gut instinct, and that is for most of us. We always ignore it. I mean, that's in most of the cases, it's the gut instinct. It would be really different for mothers because a lot of it is new and you don't know what you're going through. So to be able to pinpoint that can be very difficult. However, I would say a few things would be the safety aspect and your needs being met. I've noticed a lot of I keep repeating this, but a lot of the communities actually answer questions that mothers have. Even if it's not an expert, another mother, like in India, we have that a lot. And if you feel that you're coming on this community and another mother is giving you her experience or is telling, oh, my baby went through exactly that and you can do this, this, and this, and it worked. So you don't feel alone. Like you've immediately not felt alone. Like you've come here for the first time, you've asked a question. As you said, it takes a lot of courage to do that. So it would be a mother maybe exploring for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. She may even in that time find her question being asked within the community and someone else has answered. So that back and forth, the no judgment space, the camaraderie between the people. I think these are some few green flags you can notice right off the bat. And there is no name calling, there is no putting person on the spot. Why are you asking me this? Oh, this is such a silly question, you should know that. Like these are small things that happen even outside that we would actually be something we would stay away from. So I guess it's really the small things that highlight whether a community is a part you want to be or not be a part of it. So I think when a new mother, it might take a couple of days to, there are tons of people, I think even statistics show that a lot of people are out there just browsing more than actually using or producing content. So even when you join a new community, to be able to put out that first question may take some time. And that time reduces when you notice that it's a place I can ask my question. Because if every question is being answered, or if there's an expert in the community answering questions, if there is a mother's asking the most tiniest of questions and it's getting answered, that those are usually signs that, okay, I can probably ask my question and will not be shunned away for it. So I think most people, even us, because we are most of the time on social media, so you automatically notice red flags nowadays and it's broadcasted everywhere. So I don't think those are essentially similar things that you would see in any health community as well. people ostracizing another person or picking on people. Like the human behaviors translate even on digital platforms. It's not like we need a very different platform for that. So those are
Yeah,
mainly the communities I've seen thriving are the ones where no one thinks twice to like ask your question or to get a question answered.
got it. That's really helpful. Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
I wonder if we I wonder if we switch over to a slightly pragmatic approach. So let's imagine you're a new mother and you have an unlimited number of online forums you could join. And the question is, what advice would you give to a new mother that's never been part of an online community that wants to find a safe way to find something that addresses their needs? How would they pragmatically find one of these? Are there certain forums that you would recommend? Do you go for the paid ones or the free ones? There's WhatsApp communities, there's Facebook groups, there's Reddit, there's Mumsnet. They're just completely overwhelmed. And there's a good set of offerings, but it
Right.
can also be like, why even start?
Right. So I think you can start with what, like, is here the community that you're already in not providing you with the answer? Like, are the people around you are unavailable to help you? That includes your doctors, your partner, your family, etc. Who you would ideally go to for help? Because I would still recommend that as a first way to get any help that you need, because that's always available for you. Then you can find out, maybe like searching in India, from what I have observed, is a lot of it is word of mouth. That's what works best here.
Yeah.
If something worked with one person within the community, they always tell someone, "Oh, you can try this. This is a place where you can get an answer." So that would be a second way. Word of mouth is someone you can talk to people around you. Oh, do you know anything that's helped you? Or if you know someone who's recently given birth, oh, is there anything that's helped you? I have a couple of questions. Maybe they could even recommend a doctor to you that could suggest something. So I think those are a couple of the first few steps. Rather than immediately going online to figure out a solution, I would suggest trying to find something that's working within your community already. And then I think it's very culturally specific, because right now what works in India may not work in another country. So even if people search for online communities over here, being able to find answers. Because with one of my first communities, we noticed we had a lot of African moms on our platform as well. So I realized that the cultures are quite similar. That's why we had women on our platform from Africa. It's because the advice given here was something that they would find within their community too. So I guess geographically specific communities that are there would be better to join. It's not always easy to find, as you mentioned. If you go online, there are tons of communities, worldwide communities, and it's not always easy to find. But I think country-wise, the ones that are thriving usually come first when you're searching for them. So the ones that are within your community that either you've heard about or come first when you're searching for maybe help. You go into a Google, now we have a chat GPT, you go into a Google or somewhere and you type.
Yes.
Yeah, you type in women, and oftentimes it is that the communities that are in your locality are the ones that come up first. It's at least what that's the women who have joined in India have noticed that. So you'd rarely find a woman in India going to a Reddit to find an answer. Like I've almost not seen it. It's more common on the West side. It's not really common here. Here, WhatsApp groups are really common. So almost a lot of the founders I have met in India, they start WhatsApp groups, and they've told me that this works more than us building a community online. How do they make that work is they talk to mothers, and these mothers go and talk to other mothers, and they talk to more mothers within their community. So I think that is one ways in which community spreads and women start to join more of these communities that are present locally. I would take everything with a pinch of salt initially. Like, you can't trust all the information that is out there. So you have to go with that mindset. If you're going to go for an online community, you cannot directly go and expect your results immediately. Yes, it can be nerve-wracking, it can be frustrating, all of those things. But I feel that with time, you will definitely find the community. It is difficult. I will not say it's easy, or I'm not going to say that there's a definite way to find a community that you're looking for, but you usually do find it. I have spoken to people also globally, like a lot of their communities and the way they have got women to join their community is by talking to the women. And these are the women that onboard more women, more than the women finding it online. That is like a smaller percentage compared to the people who, yeah, like word of mouth spread about communities.
Good, good. We've talked a lot about digital community. That's been a lot of the work that you've been pioneering. I do want to talk about the physical side and actually how maybe they're both not as separate formats, but how they can help each other, support each other. So I'll give an example because I'm not a mother, but I've joined some health tech forums and communities, and they use that then to then do physical meetups. In the UK, we have NCT, which is when you're going through pregnancy, you meet other couples, and then people then choose that to meet up with them as a network after the birth because you're
Right.
going through similar things. There's also Peanut, which is a very popular
Yeah, I'm aware.
app for. Is that global?
Yeah,
I'm
I
pretty sure.
know about Peanut.
Yeah, and that's a great way for people that use digital tools to then meet people physically. Because again, not being a new mother, but I suspect a big part of it is actually just the physicality of being with someone going through the same thing. And a question is, from your perspective, do you see that people are able to use that to find physical forums or physical communities themselves? Or do you feel like actually they're quite satisfied with more digital presence? What's your point of view?
Right. Definitely a mix today. In India, we still have a combination of the two. We don't have just one because I think it's a culture thing where even women, after they've given birth, they go home. A lot of the places, they don't stay at home. They go and stay in their maternal home for about a month before they come back. So they do have that help within the first couple of months with childcare. So it's not really a completely digital one. But as we mentioned, is like finding your tribe. So women today and the growth of nuclear families, I would say that women don't want a mix of both. It's the wanting more than the requirement. They want a mix of both because since our culture is evolving, women want to do a lot of it by themselves. They want to bring their family up by themselves. The values are changing. It's not that whatever's passed down from the parents, I want to give that to my children. We all want to build our own values. So I think that's where the digital part comes in. You find the help at home, you stick to some parts of your culture, and then I think the building of your own parts of parenting is where you find your digital tribe, I guess. That's where it usually fits in because there are a lot of working moms now, and there are a lot of seeking help for something like a lactation expert, which in our mother's generation, no one asked for. So
Yes.
no one would know. Like we couldn't go home and ask mom, "Do you know someone who could help me with this?" Many times, a woman would be ashamed to ask her mother that because the mother never asked that question. But this is where your digital community comes because they are not going to put you down for something like that, and you know they are not going to put you down for something, and they are very likely to help you for something like that. So I think that's where the hybrid comes in, is not removing the shame of questions that were always there, within parenting and motherhood, that initially women never got. Like postpartum is a tough time. It's really a tough time, including the hormones, the pain that lasts for a long time, the healing that's going to take a lot of time. And these are things, at least here in the East, we never talked about it. We never talked about it. And that's the culture we grew up in. And that's something we don't want to do anymore. So that is where your digital community comes in, allowing you to express something that you're innately feeling that you were told never to do. So
Yes.
being able to do that is where the hybrid fits in because you need both. It's not like you need either or, you need both because that's what
Yeah.
teaches you. Your physical community teaches you to be a part of the community, whereas your
Yes.
digital community allows you to be who you want to be. So I think finding that, what you say, balance, the finding the balance on where these fit into for your life today is a big deal. I'd say that is why digital communities are thriving because they're allowing women to accept what is really happening to them and not either say
Mm.
it's normal or not say that I have to go through this by myself or I have to figure it out by myself. So that the digital community is eliminating all of these things which were considered normal previously. So I think that's what's beautifully happening today is that there's a sync between the two, and women are finally realizing that they don't need to be alone or ignore what is, what you say, is physiologically normal as a part of postpartum. And a lot of it's not. And that's where they get the
Yes,
help that they.
that's great. You made some fantastic points in there, Michelle. I really like that. The idea that digital can allow you to be who you are and to feel accepted. But there's also a role, as saying, physical communities where they teach you, they can physically show you. But as you're saying, sometimes there was a bit of stigma around asking someone something that you think you ought not to.
Right.
I spoke to a mother who had postpartum depression quite severely, because normally she's a very bubbly lady. And she turns out that apparently her mother, who had, I believe, 3 or 4 kids, had depression each time, but
Oh,
never
wow.
said anything. And her grandma had 8 kids and had depression each time, but no one had talked about it.
Right.
So her going through her first and experiencing depression, or what she realized was depression, because she didn't know what it was at the time. It was
Yeah.
actually her partner that recognized it, saying, you're not quite yourself. And for her to then broach that conversation with her mum, and for her mum to learn about her mum,
Right.
but it was never talked about because it just wasn't talked about. And for her to then say, well, why is no one talking to
Why
me
is no
about
one
this stuff?
talking about?
Why are
Exactly.
you saying this? It's kind of important, and to normalize that, I think is huge. It's huge. I speak to so many people, and this isn't just exclusive to motherhood, right? This is true of anything. As I say, I
Anything.
think everything we're talking about here is true of any physical and digital community. Any challenge you think you're going through, often, we all feel that, I guess it's the slight irony, which is we project a certain image of ourselves, and we do that even more so online,
Yes.
right? Because you can really curate that image of you. But at the same time, as much as you can position yourself up here, you can also be free to be like, well, I can just bear all to some extent and find a place digitally where I feel completely accepted. So that's a really good point you've raised there, which is how do you use the two to complement each other and to recognize where they're good and bad? Because if I think about our experience with our kids, I know that certainly in our generation and our culture, there's sometimes a tension point between this generation and the parents, because it's like, well, that's not how I did it. So mum and dad will say, hey, look, this is how we did it. You turned out fine.
Right.
I gave you water. We let you eat dirt or whatever, and you're fine, right? So stop being neurotic. But there's also a point which is, well, I'm also privy to new literature, new findings, new insights that are better, and I want to use that, and to not feel that you are being undermined or that you feel empowered to do those things, but in a way that is hopefully not at odds or doesn't cause unnecessary arguments. What one generation or one group might think might be different to what you're learning. And it's more important to not take the advice from every last conversation and then end up not making a decision.
Yeah.
So I'll make that more real. When we were having challenges with feeding, it was like, oh, do this, and someone else says do this, and someone else do this, and we asked 10 different people what they thought, and we didn't have our own opinion. And
Exactly.
every time else is you then adopt a new opinion. The whole community angle is finding, for that particular challenge, just a trusted source that you feel comfortable.
Right.
If if it is your mum and dad, and it might not be 100%, but you know what? I just feel confident that I feel okay with that decision.
Yes.
That there is a point to be made in terms of the person's experience of their actions and feeling like they are, feeling confident that they have, to the best of their ability, doing the right thing. So it's more of a reflection, I think, on
Yes,
what you said.
definitely. And maybe defining what's you want to do, like what parenting is to you. I think that's the approach that everyone needs to take. It's different for everybody. No one, as you said, you can have 10 opinions about one thing, but what is the opinion you're going to settle on? So to be able to understand that before
Mm.
you start the parenting journey, either alone or with somebody, you need to define that for yourself, because it's really what's going to gear you to make those decisions later on, rather than, okay, I have 10 things, I'll just pick randomly one, or because my parents told me this, I'm going to do this. I think it really, really depends on what you want your parenting to look like.
Mm-hmm. Good. I wonder, Michelle, if it would be interesting to delve into the insights that come up in the communities that you've been a part of. So are there particular topics or conversations that keep recurring? Like what are some of the insights or observations in terms of the content or the questions that people are asking?
When I was actually working with parenting communities, the questions, as I'm going to point out, is very different. I think what you've probably been expecting over there. Yes, definitely in the resilience and how can I make my child maybe smarter or gain things, knowledge better. I guess that's a concern most parents have. Out here in India, we do have questions about the way the child looks. I think that is something that's a very big, yeah, it is a big deal. It was very interesting. I didn't expect that, but I used to get a lot of questions on they're not eating enough, they don't look like the other children their age. So how do I make sure they eat enough so that they look almost equal to the children their age? They're worried about the height. So a lot of physical attributes are also concerns a lot of parents have over here. Breastfeeding and all was a concern. That's why I mentioned the lactation experts. It was something unknown of when I used to mention going to a lactation expert, women would often not know that there were experts for this out here in India. And we do have many certified lactation experts. It's just that there is no connection, and these are where the women found the connection. A lot of the times we would actually bring lactation experts on board to answer some of the questions. We'd host like live sessions where the mothers could ask these questions and the experts would either tell them to go and get help or tell them what some simple ways that they could change and that could probably help them with breastfeeding. So I think that is one way in which these communities helped that I found is that they could go to the experts, which they never knew existed before. They didn't know, they didn't know that they could go. Inclusive pediatric help. I think a lot of the times parents overlook that as well. Like, okay, I can take care of my baby with all these home remedies. Home remedies is another one. In India, we get asked a lot, like for anything.
Yeah.
Can I give my baby this? Can I give my baby that? My baby is 4 months. Can I start feeding my baby food? Those are questions we got asked a lot. I think in India, a lot is based on food related questions. Then,
Okay.
yes, I think now we have a new breed of questions are the technology-based questions, where how do I stop my child from using this? So they don't realize it's an habit that they have formulated from a long time ago. So it's not something you can change overnight. And it's probably too late to ask the question, but definitely these are some things that need to be explored when it comes to parenting aspect, I think, like starting at the outset with devices, when is the right age? I guess these are some things that needs to be directed more towards the parents because children are going to learn what they have access to. And that's almost anything. Like in our time or even our parents' time, it was books. Those are the things. And TV. I would say TV would be something we enjoyed
Yeah.
because that was fascinating to us. Today, it's like all the gadgets. Those are the colorful things lying in front. And because of the fast-paced world, parents sometimes don't have enough time for their children. So this is the first thing they reach to pacify their child when their child is sitting either crying or So it's a concern, but it is starting from behavioral changes that should have behavioral aspects that should have been taken care of earlier. So unknowingly, it became a problem that parents now want to solve. So I think these are some things that you need to consider when you start having a child or when you start introducing technology into your child. So that's a new question that we are seeing now, like of the past couple of years, I think. How do I make my child stop using the phone or not get so attracted to the device? So because it's the difficulty of the situation after you take away the device from the child, so they don't know how to solve that problem. So I think that is something that needs to be discussed at an early stage so that parents don't reach a stage where they have to figure out how do I navigate it at the later phase.
I should join that forum, which it's another just universal trait of any community, which is comparison.
Right.
Right? Is my kid behaving normally Or is my kid, is he big enough? Is he healthy enough? Is he strong enough? Is he clever enough? Or he or she, etc.
Exactly.
And you do that, and your answer, rightly or wrongly, is based off of the community that you measure yourself against. And that can be at times not the best measure,
Yes.
right? Because you have no idea what the other person you're comparing them against has gone through, what they have, what they don't have. It's absolutely natural. We do it. I will probably continue to do it unintentionally, right? So I'm not saying this is something that you can just say, don't do that. We all do it. It is like innate in all of us. But the point is to be aware of it. So when you are asking these questions, it is useful. Absolutely. I think it would be useful to know whether my newborn baby is growing relative to the population, right? That is useful to know. There's a reason we have tests to benchmark where we are. There is value in that. But we all know that there is also another side to it, which is when you get unhealthily obsessed with where your kid is in the population curve, right?
Definitely, yes.
And you and I will both know, as from an Asian perspective, when it comes to education, right, it has to be up here, right? It's like A is not good enough, and so I think I'm just calling out the natural tendency in any community, digital or physical, which is to compare and to be aware of that. So it's just interesting to hear you hear those things, whether it's to do with looks or how big they are. There'll be other dimensions where we are naturally
Compared.
comparing.
Yeah. It's very common out here. Yeah, it's very common out here. As you said, as the children, I have not had been in within many communities for older children, but for the young ones,
Yeah,
it has always been these things. But you're right about the grades, etc. That still goes on. It's still like
yeah.
we have children's grades plastered on the road or on hoarding boards. So we do see
I
that.
still do that now. Yeah, yeah. When I was in consulting, I was like, "Oh, what did you get? Oh, you got what did you get? Were you met expectations above or below? Like, are you being performance managed? It's how we measure. It's how we govern communities,
Right.
right? It's a natural principle of running communities. The other point I wanted to touch on is a friend of mine, actually a guy I had on the podcast called
Right.
Matt Lowe. He called the Dad Table. And what's interesting there is we've talked about community as providing a response to certain burning questions that you might have. But there's also a point where people might want to come to this community not for answers. And this
Mhm.
is what the Dad Table is. It's just a place to express yourself
Right.
without the need for any kind of resolution. So the Dad Table is all about inviting fathers who just want to talk about what's going on and just as a way to vent, to get things off their chest. And he has a great principle which says, like, don't offer a solution unless it's been asked for. Sometimes the value of these forums isn't necessarily in the answers you get or the quality of the answers. It's just a space to be, as you said, to be yourself
Right.
and to not feel judged. It's more just a reflection on the value of community or a good community that can just be there to listen to whatever you're going through, and the value for you as the member to find the ability to express yourself, because maybe you don't want to tell your mum that you can't breastfeed or that you're going through some sort of level of depression. So there's just such a great value that I want people to acknowledge in terms of just being able to express yourself.
Yeah. I think that's great. Don't ask a question. I mean, don't answer it until it's asked. I think that's something I would also advocate for when it comes to building anything that matters, because there's tons of advice. As you said, people are waiting to give advice out there, but do not give it unless you're asked for it, because not everyone needs your opinion about things. And I think that's the unfortunate reality that social media has created for us, that people think it's okay to always give. You don't know what a woman is going through postpartum. Nobody knows that. Even her partner may not know that. So unless she asks for help, she may not always. There are cues. There are silent cues. Only people, like as you mentioned a little while earlier, her husband noticed that she had changed in her behavior. So someone who's fine-tuned with the way you behave is going to notice these cues. But those are also silent ways of asking for help. It's not really that she's vocally sought out for help, but those are silent ways in which she's asking for help. Because those are evident signs that someone who's close to you or an expert would be able to identify that, okay, this person needs something to help them out through this process. It may not necessarily be postpartum, but postpartum is a great example since we're talking about post pregnancy. So it's being observant of when someone needs help. Don't always assume that someone needs help. A lot of the time, people just take their time to figure things out for themselves. That doesn't mean that they need your help with that because everyone's life runs at a different pace. Everyone's parenting style is different. And being more in tune with the different styles of parenting, being more understanding that everything doesn't have to look the same. I think that's the beauty of the world we live in today is that we're advocating for different types of ways of approaching life. And I think that's even the beauty of all kinds of community. What I have loved over the years of being a part of digital communities was that there is something unique and new even I am learning. On the other side, I'm the expert, but being an expert on these platforms, I am learning so much.
Mm,
So I think that's what digital communities are allowing today. Like as experts also, we learn about so many, like now currently a huge topic for discussion amongst women health is menopause. Women are coming forth with so many symptoms that initially were never heard, never talked about. So being able to be a part of this digital world is helping like plug in a lot of things that we initially ignored. And that also applies to postpartum. I think there are
yes.
lots of symptoms, mental health, physical symptoms that were initially ignored. Like we assume postpartum were the first few, and it's always looked at how the baby is growing. It's rarely looked at as how the mother is healing. So I think there are
Mm,
very two different events that are happening after delivery, which is rarely looked at as two different events. It's looked as one event. So I think
yes.
that's a very important thing to consider. And digital communities is allowing for that, where the focus is being also shifted on the mother and her healing journey like, during the
Yes.
postpartum phase.
The focus goes straight to the baby, understandably, but it shouldn't be to forsake the mother or the parents for the matter, but obviously the mother's physical and mental health should be as big of a priority as the baby's. As you're saying, this is one of it will be the biggest physical and emotional
Exactly.
transition you'll go through. But yet, there was that stat like 15% of new women got asked by their GP how they're doing. And even that is more just like,
It's
are you okay? Like, okay, fine.
exactly.
In this conversation, we've talked about the value of community physically, digitally. We talked about cultural differences. We talked about where it's come through from way back when to where we are right now with this kind of merge between physical and digital and the value that we can get from both of those complementing each other. Where do you think this is all going in future? Do you have a view in terms of what the future of community looks like? Is it more of the same, or is it some fundamentally different way that we orchestrate?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of communities are still haphazard because it's something new being explored still. I think niche communities for specific concerns are going to be our future because we have now for parenting, but parenting on its own is such a vast and different. There are so many different phases to talk about. So, like, communities are going to look more specific, more niche oriented for the specific concerns people have. Like, I grew communities that was for women's health, and today we have so many spectrum and different concerns for women's health. Whereas initially I would answer all the questions related to anything that came under the umbrella of women's health. So I think that's where communities are going to go. A lot of the concern is around communities becoming redundant because they eventually become forums or people spam them. So I think moderation and regulation is going to be something that's very important when it comes to communities because we don't want to lose the human touch because we are also going more into an artificial AI technology based. So we don't want to lose that human touch. And I think that is the one thing probably is concerning for a lot of people that are part of communities. Oh, what if I'm talking to a chatbot, not a real
Yes.
human on the other side? So I think
Yeah.
trying to maintain or keep that human aspect of communities because that's the only way communities are going to thrive. People are not going to want to talk to bots. They can do that on their own
Yeah.
time. I think people are already doing that. So that's something we need to work on and try to eliminate it as much. It's while it's very what you call it, very easy to go into that because it's the fastest way to build a community and grow it. But I think going through the pain of actually organically growing a community gives more dividends in the future, because that is what we want. We want to not lose the human touch. I think that's something that we would need to sustain in the future. And that's, I think, where our future is going, being able to sustain the human touch within communities, because that's the gray area we're treading on right now. So I think being able to maintain that and build more specific communities, even if it's just a few people, like 2,000, at least you've maintained something that specific to that community, and the women or whoever has joined the community is gaining that insight or gaining that need that they have come there for. So I think staying on that line of focus is what I would hope for the future of communities.
Great. It's a very wise insight. I'm seeing that because I'm part of these, trying to get into the, understanding the health tech forum. And, on one hand of the scale, you've got authenticity and integrity. And on the other hand, you've got scale and rapid growth.
Right.
And those are
Quite contradictory.
typically, at odds with each other. How do you see, and AI is an obvious bridge, or certainly a tool that's being used to rapidly scale these solutions.
Right.
But in that mix, it'll be sacrificing in terms of authenticity and integrity and, I guess, meaning. Now, I think there is, not to say that they are mutually exclusive. I think there's some really fantastic use cases. Like we've seen those mental health chatbots that are credibly delivering positive outcomes for people that would otherwise have no access to a therapist.
100%.
And the therapists in the UK, maybe they're £100 an hour. Now, if I can chat to ChatGPT for free and it makes me feel better, who cares?
Why not?
That's good.
Definitely.
So
absolutely.
I think it's, but there is also the other side, which is, you've just got farms of chatbots claiming to be real people, and you don't know it. At least if I choose to talk to AI, I know I'm talking to AI.
Yeah.
The issue comes, as you said, which is when an entity or bad entity presents themselves as another person. I'm actually not talking to Michelle. I'm talking to a chat. I'm talking to an avatar that actually you're not even here. So it's like there becomes a challenge, which is again that's the murkier future ahead, which I tend to agree on. But I thought, I think it's a nice way to round. I think there's probably a follow-on conversation at some point to look at that whole world. I just want to take a moment to say thank you, Michelle. It's been really interesting. I'm sure there's plenty more we can talk about.
Definitely.
But I feel like it's a really interesting conversation. Before we do leave, are there any platforms or pieces of work that you're doing that if you would like to promote, feel free to obviously talk about it?
That would definitely be because I'm working in the primary stages for a couple of communities. So just testing the waters with different conversations. But I would just want to round up with a lot of what we talked about today about putting mothers at the forefront. I think that's still not happening a lot. And that's the conversation we essentially wanted to try to have today. And with the podcast, you're doing a lot of that. And I hope that it is something we can see in the near future, more postpartum care, more postpartum health, and more postpartum discussions. I would love to see more women talking about their concerns without being worried about asking their questions. So hopefully in the future, we see more of those communities come.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
And talk again soon.
Yep. Take care.